Is making a DLC worth it? How much money will a DLC make? Should you make a DLC for your indie game? In this video, I will try to give some kind of an answer to all of these questions. At the same time, I will also give an update on how much money my game Mortal Glory has made to this date, including the DLC. Hi, my name is Auro. I'm a full-time indie game developer and I'm the creator of a game called Mortal Glory. On top of that, I also make these weekly YouTube videos sharing my experiences to help you on your own game dev journey. Let's get started with today's topic. So, maybe you have already released a game and the game has even found an audience. Lucky you. You might now be thinking if you could provide some extra content to the game and earn some additional income at the same time with a DLC. Your main question probably is, how many of your game's current customers will buy the DLC if you make one? This is called the attach rate. I did a little bit of googling and found out some widely varying numbers, all the way from 5% to as high as 40%. It's understandable that there is a lot of fluctuation with the numbers, as there are many different kinds of DLCs released in many different contexts. What does the DLC contain? Is the content well received by players? What is the price of the DLC? How quickly after the release of the base game is the DLC released? All of these and more will affect the attach rate and how much revenue the DLC will generate. A big, reasonably priced DLC at the peak of the game's popularity is likely to end up having a high attach rate. But if you release a small cosmetic DLC 5 years after the game peaked, you are very likely to end up with an abysmal attach rate. So there isn't one single answer, unfortunately, and it will depend on your game and the context your game lives in. Towards the end of the video, I will talk a bit about how to estimate what the answer might look like for your game. But what about my game, Mortal Glory? Well, glad you asked, since to that question I have some definite answers and hard, cold facts in the form of numbers. As a quick background, I released my game 29th of January 2020. The game was successful, so after a few months I started working on a DLC and was able to release it on the 14th of September 2020, around 7.5 months after the release of the base game. So the base game has now been out a year and a few months, while the DLC has been out a bit over 8 months. Good, that's enough background details. Let's go through some of the key sales figures. As of this date, Mortal Glory as a base game has sold 20,349 copies, and the DLC for it has sold 6,942 copies. So 34% of everyone who has bought the base game has also bought the DLC. I think that is pretty damn amazing. Last time I shared the DLC numbers was in the how much money my game made in 1 year video, and back then the attach rate was at 27%. So it seems that the number has been nicely trending upwards. If we continue with the numbers, as of this date, Mortal Glory, just the base game, has sold $128,999 gross on Steam. So that is the highest of the sales numbers. I haven't actually gotten that much myself. I wish. From that number, you deduct returns, chargebacks, Steam's cut, and all the taxes to arrive at the sum that I have gotten myself. If you're interested in all the details on that, be sure to check the money video I made previously. But anyway, so the base game's total gross sales were almost 130,000. For the DLC, it's $22,564. Those with a sharp mind or a calculator can deduce that this means that the DLC accounts for 14.9% of Mortal Glory's total revenue. And actually, the return rate on the DLC is much lower, around half of the base game. If you account for the lower amount of returns, the DLC share of the total revenue is bumped up to 15.7%. The lower rate of return sounds logical. If you like the game enough to buy a DLC, you are less likely to return the DLC. Of course, the DLC still has to overall be enjoyable, so it won't immediately get returned. If you still want to make the DLC numbers sound a little better, you can spin the numbers and say that the DLC has increased the total revenue by 18.6%. Okay, that's all nice and good. Getting more money is always a plus. But nothing is free. What did it cost me to make the DLC? Was it worth it if you account that into the calculation? Well, money-wise, it only cost me $86 to get some additional art for the new units in the DLC. It's such a low sum that I won't bother taking that into the calculations. But aside from money, making the DLC also cost me time. And time is money. In a recent video, I went through all the hours I used for Mortal Glory, including the DLC. You can check that video for more details, but the total number of hours I spent for the game was 1,681. Out of those, the DLC accounted for 276 hours. That is 16.4% of the total hours. Since I spent 16.4% of my total time on the DLC, I guess a somewhat fair statement would be that the DLC should also account for 16.4% of the total revenue. Otherwise, in terms of hours spent, it hasn't been worth it if you compare to the base game. Since the DLC's share of total revenue was 15.7%, it's 0.7% below the target and in result would earn the DLC a verdict of not worth it. Well, hold on there, not so fast. It's very close, and that's still almost $82 worth of sales for each hour spent, and that will only go up as time goes on. There are also some soft benefits that you cannot see in the numbers, like maybe someone had stopped playing the game but started playing again when the DLC came out, and as a result of that, mentioned about the game to a friend or two, which then influenced those friends to buy the game, increasing the overall revenue. I would like to think that things like that bump up the actual share of revenue number very close to the 16.4% target. And even if it doesn't, I still think the DLC was very much worth it, even if the numbers were much worse. If I wanted to maximize just the revenue generated per hour spent, I could have just added a few new characters to the game, maybe some new skins for the previous characters or something small visual like that. That wouldn't have required much time at all, and I probably could have sold a DLC like that for somewhere between $1 and $2. Financially, that might have been the smartest move, at least for maximizing the value generated per hour of work. But instead, I spent a lot of time adding a new game mode, completely unique weapon class with bows, and over 40 new skills, plus the 5 new characters that were quick to add. It took a lot of time, but I am really happy with what I was able to add to the game, and I think it provides good value for the cost of the DLC. So overall, yes, I think making a DLC was very much worth it in my case. How much might your DLC sell if you make one? Luckily, it's easier to estimate than a completely new game, as you know exactly how big your current potential customer base is. You can estimate the revenue by multiplying your target attach rate by the number of existing customers in your base game multiplied by the planned DLC price. That's the estimated revenue for the current situation. You can then make some projections for future sales to get an estimate for the lifetime revenue if you want. It's a lot of estimation, but it's better than nothing if you need to come up with a number to help you decide. The attach rate is affected by many things, but if your game is fairly recent, I think an attach rate of around 20% would be a good target to use in calculations. If you go over that, that will be a happy surprise then. And if you go below that, your DLC probably wasn't that attractive to players. This again is for recently released games. For older games, the attach rate will always be lower since many players won't revisit an old game. There are also many things you can do to increase the attach rate. Mainly, try to let all your current customers know about the DLC. On Steam, you should use a visibility round when you release the DLC. It might also be a good idea to put your base game to sale when you release the DLC to get a nice initial boost. I think it's also a good idea to showcase the DLC inside your base game. At least I did that, and I think I was able to provide an accurate and attractive presentation of the DLC for anyone who played my base game and checked the pop-up. Okay, but that's all I have to say about DLCs for now. Let me know in the comments if you have some experiences of your own regarding DLCs, or if you still had some questions in mind that I didn't cover in this video. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.